Charles Darwin was a man that started a century-long battle. Charles Darwin fought for a reason to prove that God does not exist. He experimented and observed wildlife in the Galapagos Islands. He watched many different species and saw how each of them adapted to their surroundings. In 1859, Charles Darwin published The Origin of Species. It put down a foundation of evolution. Darwin argued for the development of species. He said that species that were not able to adapt to their surroundings died off. The species that were able to change along with their changing surroundings survived to reproduce and create a healthier, stronger species. Darwin claimed that every species came from one common ancestor. That ancestor reproduced and adapted to their surroundings, and reproduced again, and continued changing and creating different organisms and species. The drawing ends at human life. So Darwin is saying that all of us came from one single-cell organism that has adapted and evolved to become us.
I guess it just had to be. Won't someone...
The 1920s school consisted of one-room schoolhouses and predominantly white children. At this time, there was still much segregation to young African Americans. The schools did not separate by classes, but rather taught all grades in one room. During the 1920s, creationism was the main scientific explanation for how we came here. Evolution was not accepted in public schools yet. Schools in the 21st century have progressed in technology, scientific evidence, and many other things. Today, evolution is the most widely accepted cause for how we got here. Today, our schoolrooms are all in different classrooms, and we each have our own teachers that know their subjects very well.
John Scopes was a very well-known man. He was also a very good teacher. John Scopes was asked by the UCLA, American Civil Liberties Union, to teach evolution in his classroom. He knew it was illegal, but they offered to pay for his trial. John Scopes took the chance.
Scopes entered his classroom and started reading the evolutionary theory out of his biology book. It was well publicized that he was going to teach about it, and right after he finished his lesson, he was arrested and put on trial.
Scopes' monkey trial, as it was called, took place in Tennessee. At this time, there was total opposition to the teaching of Darwin's theories in the schools. Even though evolution was already being taught in the universities, the most people in the more rural parts of the country thought it was clearly against everything they believed in and didn't want their children to be exposed to such heresy.
Clarence Darrow, who was a well-known trial lawyer, was an agnostic who was known for defending political and labor unions. Darrow did his best to help support why evolution is a better theory, but in the end fell short. Darrow was quoted saying, "I do not consider it an insult, but rather a compliment to be called an agnostic. I do not pretend to know where my many ignorant men are sure."
Your sin was letting me and getting me in your...
A prominent Presbyterian lawyer volunteered himself to be the lawyer for the state. His name was William Jennings Bryan. Bryan had ran for president 3 times on the Democratic ballot. He was not a very smart man, but had a very publicized battle for the evolutionary thought. He said while on trial, "The contest between evolution and Christianity is a duel to the death." At the trial, Darrow was not allowed to call any scientific witnesses in presenting his defense, so Darrow's main witness became Bryan himself. One observer said that it seemed as though the Bible itself was on trial. Darrow tried to make Bryan look foolish on the stand, when under oath that a big fish had swallowed Jonah, and Eve was created from Adam's rib, and that God had flooded the earth to kill every living thing in 2348 BC. The trial itself was seen as a circus. There were hundreds of reporters that swamped the town. There were concession stands selling toy monkeys, people on soapboxes outside the courtroom offering their opinions, and radio reporters filling the courtroom to send the story to the rest of the country. After 8 days of testimony, Scopes was found guilty of violating the Tennessee law and was fined $100. Later, the Supreme Court reversed the decision based on the technicality. However, the court upheld the constitutionality of the Tennessee law, the Butler Act. While Bryan got the verdict he fought for, many still thought in some ways the biblical story of creation had taken and been degraded or made look foolish. Pius VII said in the 1950s that he thought evolution and teaching in the schools should be illegal. In the late 1950s, the National Science Foundation funded biological sciences curriculum. The report was really the catalyst for emphasizing the importance of having evolution taught in public schools. It stated that in order for us to keep up with the Soviet Union in science and technology, evolution should be taught or it would fall behind. From early 1960s on, evolution was taught in schools, replacing the Bible's version of creation. However, there was a bit of revival in the creation theory in the 60s, when John Whitcomb, an Old Testament scholar, and Henry Morris, a university professor, wrote the book The Great Flood. Even today, it is still an important book that creationist scientists use. The debate between fundamentalist Christians and the scientific world rages on with regards to the creation of the world and Darwin's theory. It will likely be an argument that remains unresolved, with both sides holding strong opinions. In a more modern-day case, Kitzmiller versus Dover Area School District, the school was challenged by several parents over the school's decision to present alternative argument to evolution and presented intelligent design. Once again, the ACLU joined the fight, supporting the parents against the school. The judge in the case ruled the teaching of intelligent design was unconstitutional because it was not science, and barred the board from having this part of their curriculum.
So, in the 1920s, evolution was a sin to teach. Now, it's accepted throughout all the world. Although there are still gaps in the theory, it is still believed to have more evidence than creationism. Darwin said, "If you find one hole in my theory, the whole theory will be disproved." Apparently, we haven't found enough evidence to disprove the theory yet. There is a very big difference between what public schools and private schools teach. Ever since the 1960s, evolution was widely taught and accepted in America. There is great controversy on whether or not to teach creationism in the public schools. Private schools, however, can teach creationism. They do not have to be politically correct and say that evolution is the only possible way we came here, by chance. Private schools can teach that there is a higher power, or being, that created us.
Scope was put on trial for teaching evolution out of his biology book. At this time, evolution was not accepted and creationism was widely accepted. Evolution was not accepted because it was not well known, and not many children even knew about it because it was not taught. Now evolution is widely accepted and is the main reason how we got here. Church and state did not get along very well. The 20s was a time period of great chaos, and there are many different things going on. There are many battles whether or not evolution or creation should be taught in public schools.